Buenas tardes. Hoy en nuestro programa Masterclass tenemos al profesor Adrian Sterling. Bienvenido a Madrid. El profesor Sterling es vicepresidente del Consejo Británico del Copyright y profesor de la Queen Mary University, también en propiedad intelectual. Es una de las mayores autoridades en propiedad intelectual a nivel internacional y estamos encantados de que esté aquí con nosotros esta tarde. Le vamos a hacer una pequeña entrevista, como es nuestra costumbre, para que pueda introducir los temas de los que va a hablar en la conferencia que tendremos a continuación y también profundizar en algunos puntos. Could you please present the issues that you will address in this conference today?
Well, thank you very much, Ms. Moscovo. I'd like to say first what a privilege it is for me and an honor to be here in Spain. And it also allows me to meet again old friends and make new friends, colleagues, some of them that I've known for nearly 50 years. So I'm very pleased to be here. As to the conference itself, the copyright laws of the world are national laws, and they deal with what happens in the particular country. The Spanish law deals with what happens in Spain, the French law with happens in France. But we have international agreements on copyright, but they all get back to a territorial system of copyright protection. So this was fine in what I call the Gutenberg era, before we had the internet. Because with the internet, when something goes on the internet, it can go throughout the world in a borderless communication society. So how do we adjust and use the copyright system, which is such an important feature of the preservation and the development of culture? How do we preserve the copyright system and make it work in the internet era? And this is basically the main point that I'll be presenting in the conference, what the problems are and possible solutions and how we could achieve them.
So, Professor Sterling, among these solutions that you are announcing, it is probably this space copyright treaty that you have written about, and you have worked on this idea for the last years. Could you please tell us a little bit what is it about?
I said before that we were dealing with a territorial system of copyright because we've only been worried or concerned with what happens on Earth. If I write a book and somebody copies it in another country, I'm concerned with it. And in the past, I've been able to do something about it. And the way that I get my relief is through legal action and through administration societies. They are equally important in preserving and maintaining copyright. We cannot have copyright without a law to grant it, and a law without administration in the copyright field is of no use to me. If I have a right and it can't be exercised, I can't really get any benefit from it. So we have this wonderful system of collective management societies throughout the world, of which Sky in Spain is a very prominent and distinguished member. And they make reciprocal agreements between each other, and so globally we manage fairly well. But there are problems which I'll be dealing with later that the management societies are facing, and I'll be dealing with those a little later. Now, we know that there are already human beings in space, on the space station, and they are going to the planets, they've been to the moon. They are going to establish research areas on places in space, on the moon and on Mars, and in those space areas there will be human beings present. And the point is that they will communicate with Earth, and the Earth will want to communicate with them. What is the first thing that happened when Captain Armstrong landed on space? He spoke to space in these famous words, and they were heard by millions of people throughout the world. Supposing Captain Armstrong, when he stepped off the plane, had sung my song, Copyright Rock, and my song had gone all over the world, communicated, without my permission. This is what is going to happen. Copyright works are going to be communicated from space to Earth, and copyright works are going to be sent back because the people who are living in space will want entertainment. So the present laws do not cover space. They are what happens in Spain, they are what happens in the United States, they are what happens in Russia or any other country. They are not what happens in extraterritorial areas or in space. So it is very important, as I foresee it, that we start now to thinking of expanding the copyright system throughout the universe, because that is where man and women are going. What are we going to expand? We have the old and well-established and most effective copyright treaty and convention, the Berne Convention of 1886, and we have the WIP, the World Intellectual Property Organization treaties, last brought up to date only last year in 2012. Those are our bedrocks of copyright protection on Earth. We need to extend those to space, and we need the nations of the world, probably through the World Intellectual Property Organization, to join together and agree that what people do in space, as far as copyright works are concerned, is covered by the International Convention. And it may be of interest to those who are watching this that I have drafted a treaty, Space Copyright Treaty, which is available online, and the reference is given on this interview, and you can go to that site and you can see the reasons for the Space Copyright Treaty and a draft treaty which I hope will serve as basis for discussion in this area. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. We will include the references in the interview. Professor Sterling, you also mentioned in your paper how important is the recognition of copyright and the way to make effective the rights that otherwise could not be a benefit from those persons who are the beneficiaries of the rights. So, in your opinion, how collective societies can work in the achievement of this goal of making effective the rights?
If one looks at what we all hear on the radio or in television or in concerts, when we listen to music, that wonderful gift that we have, there are usually, when we receive music, three parties concerned. There is the composer of the music, there is the performer who performs it, and there is the record producer who has made a recording of it, or perhaps either audio or visual. But there is a recording. And there are three different rights then, the right of the author, the right of the performer, and the right of the record producer. They are different in some ways, but basically they say you cannot copy our performance or our work or our recording without our consent, and you cannot broadcast it or put it on the internet without our consent. Broadly speaking, those are the rights. Now, of course, performers can't run around the world exercising these rights. They have to have a society, so do authors and so do record producers. And the core of the effectiveness of copyright, I believe, are the management societies, collective management societies. I, as an author, cannot possibly exercise my rights on the internet throughout the world, or even in Spain alone or in Britain alone, without a society which is occupying itself with seeing that people have got licenses, that they pay them, and that they give me my royalties. I can't do that. I'm writing law texts or composing songs or whatever it is. So they are crucially important. And because of that, the European Union is studying now, and the Commission has published a draft directive to help establish good working practices throughout the European Union, and transparency, as it's called, throughout the Union, so that we know how collecting societies are working, and we can see how effective they are and what help they need or what extra support they need. So you ask me, what about this draft directive, which may go through this year, we don't know quite. Basically, it's very good. It establishes principles that should be recognized everywhere, how collecting societies should work and so forth, how the authors and others should be able to know what's going on. Excellent. But the internet requires that the license that I get as a website host is global. Because when I put your song on the internet, you write a song, Moonlight in Madrid by Adrian and Moscovo, and it's a world hit, and I am a website and I put Moonlight in Madrid on the internet without your consent. It is downloaded in 100 countries around the world. How can you possibly exercise that yourself? Well, in the European Union directive, you will be aided for your aid and the way it's done in Europe. But what I, as a website host, need is a global license, not just one that covers Europe. Because the minute I put that on the internet, your song goes around the world. And so my first comment on the directive would be, it's fine as far as it goes, but more is needed from the international copyright community. We need a system where I, as an honest website host, can go to a collecting society and get a global license. And that is what needs to be done. I have made a proposal about a central agency that any user can go to get the license that he or she or it needs. And that is also on the website of Queen Mary, University of London, which those who are looking at this program can access. And this is the next step we have to do. We have to get administrative global procedures so that we can't think anymore just territorially, we have to think globally. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, Professor Sterling, in your conference, you're going to be addressing another very important topic that has had some polemics in the last years. I'm referring to the liability of internet service providers. In your opinion, how this liability issue should be clarified in legislation with regard to internet?
Well, I look at it from the point of view of the internet service provider. I look at it from the point of view of a national website or a commercial website or a private website. Most people want to observe the law if it's reasonable and affordable and just. And so as an internet service provider, I need to go and get a license when I'm using protected material. If as a copyright owner wants to take action against an internet service provider who has not got the necessary license, he or she has to go to the law, has to go before the court, and has to say, this website has broadcast or put on the internet my work, whatever it may be, and the judge or the judges, first of all, have to see what the law says, and they have to see what rights there are and what the internet service provider should have got, if he should have got anything. And there comes our first problem, because we have these international conventions and treaties, which I've mentioned, which give the author rights not to have his or her work put on the internet without his or her consent. But it doesn't tell us many things. It doesn't tell us actually who is liable for the internet. Is it the website host? Is it the person who uploads material to the website? What about the intermediary service providers? Are they liable for retransmitting? There aren't international agreements that cover all this. So the second thing is, and a vital question is, where does the communication take place? Because the law says very clearly in these WIPO treaties that I as an author have the right to communicate my work to the public on the internet. Broadly speaking, that's what it means. So it's put on the internet in Spain and it's accessed in the United States. So the act of transmission is Spain, it's received in the United States. Where is it communicated to the public? In Spain or in the United States or both? Now, the internet service provider must know that, and the management society must know that in order to see what the liability is. So we have to define the rights much more clearly. The second thing is, your work, Moonlight, in Madrid, was put on a website in Spain without your consent. And it was downloaded in the United States by 100,000 people who wanted to hear this. Now, undoubtedly there has been an infringement of the United States Copyright Act. Undoubtedly. It should, under US law, the US, somebody should have got permission to do that. I, as the internet service provider who gave this. How does the judge view that when you come to the Spanish judge and you say, my work was copied 10,000 times in the United States? Will the judge say, well, you better go to the United States? Or does the judge say, I can try that here? Now, we have had recent decision in the United Kingdom, which is of great importance because it says if the defendant is present in the country of the court, the defendant can be sued in that country for what he does in infringement in any other country. So this principle is not yet specifically incorporated in international copyright law, but we need it clarified so that the internet service provider can see exactly what his liability is and can see what licenses he needs. It will need very detailed international discussion. I'm confident that it can be solved because it's a narrow area, as it were. It's not the whole of broadcasting or the whole of printing and publication. It's about this. But the basic thing is we must have our principles right, we must have our definitions right, and we must have application of the law everywhere. So to conclude, if I may say, on those questions which you so kindly have put, it's nice to have a Latin motto for everything. This is the ancient tradition. So I have a Latin motto for copyright. Jus auctoris ubique. Authors write everywhere. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Si queréis conocer en detalle los temas que va a exponer el profesor Sterling esta tarde, además de lo que ha anunciado en esta entrevista, podéis verlo en nuestra página web masterclass.iaformacion.com. Muchas gracias.